Well, hey everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is Aaron. Well, today I have something a little unusual in that you have me at a disadvantage because you've already seen the thumbnail and you've already seen the title, so you know for sure what's in this box when, as the time of recording, which is in your past, I don't know for sure exactly what's in this box. I think I do. I think it's a brand new PC clone. That is the IBM PC. The original one that came out in 1981 used the 8088 processor, and this is a brand new clone of that PC, but in a laptop form factor with some newer technology, of course, thrown in. So today I want to do an unboxing, take a look at what exactly makes up this particular unit, and I also have a stack of 8-bit ISA cards because this is supposed to come with an extension module that allows you to plug in real 8-bit ISA cards, just like you would have on the IBM PC. So I want to test these out and see if they work. That's coming up right now on the Retro Hack Shack. Hey everybody, sorry for the interruption, but I've got something important to talk about. So you may have noticed on the channel that there was a longer than usual gap recently in my episodes that were coming out, and that is because I got to take a week-long vacation with the family and just basically didn't do any work during that time, and didn't have any backups so I could put out a video while I was gone, so I apologize for that. But we were able to take a trip to one of our favorite places, which is Maui in Hawaii. So that was 10 days ago we left and came back. One of our favorite places to spend time in Maui and to stay is Lahaina. And we love the people, the food, the historic nature of the town. And yesterday we got the news that a fire had broken out, fueled by hurricane winds. And it completely destroyed the historic town of Lahaina. So as you can imagine, this was shocking for us, having been to a place that we love and then coming back and hearing that it has been completely destroyed. And the biggest impact, to be honest, is going to be to the locals that live and work in Hawaii, specifically in Maui, in some of those places, and on the Big Island where there's fires burning as well. Most of the population there lives paycheck to paycheck. These are the people that clean the places where people stay. They cook the food that people eat. They take people out on once-in-a-lifetime trips to go snorkeling or see whales or whatever. And how they make their livelihood is tied to tourists being able to come, and they treat everybody great. But that opportunity now is gone, along with their homes, their valuables. For a lot of them now, there's going to be no place for them to even work because tourists have also stopped coming. They've asked tourists not to come at this point. And so the main driver of the economy there, which is tourism, which was just impacted heavily by COVID, now for those people that work and live in those areas, it's going to be just almost impossible. So here's what I'm asking for you to do. I'm going to put a link down below to a place where you can donate money to people that live in these areas. I chose this particular link because it allows you to split money up between many charitable organizations, or you can pick one if you have a specific desire. For example, Maui Food Bank, if you want to donate specifically to that one, you can using this tool. If you have the means and you could skip a few coffees or maybe put off purchasing one of these great vintage computers to donate 10, 25, 50 bucks to the support effort, I would really appreciate it. And I know the people of Maui and Hawaii would appreciate it as well. I mean, who knows? Maybe we can raise $1,000 or something and provide food for a few families for a month or something like that so that they can get by until they can get their feet back under them. So I will also be donating any of the sponsorship money that comes in from PCBWay, for example, who sponsor my channel. That money will also, I'll give that back to these local relief efforts. And I'll also be changing up my lower third down below. So you'll see that throughout the next couple of videos with links for people to donate. So again, sorry for the downer. Hopefully the rest of the show is a little bit more uplifting, but I really, really do appreciate any support that you can provide. Okay, on with the show. All right, so let's go ahead and open this thing up. I've got my trusty knife here ready to go. Let's just go ahead and see what's in here. Well, there's a lot of foam. I think this is it here. And this is the way it's sold on AliExpress. That's where I got mine from about a month ago or so. Yeah, if you search for Book 8088, you should be able to find this on AliExpress. I think a couple other YouTubers have gotten one of these and maybe done reviews. I think I saw LGR did one. He always pops up on my feed. But I didn't watch that video, so maybe he's answered some questions that I have already. Maybe I should watch it before I do this, but I'm just going to go ahead and take a look and form my own opinion. So here we go. Here's everything that was in the bag. We've got the Book 88 itself. We've got a power adapter. This is a 12 volt, 1.5 amp power adapter. Actually, it's pretty small for a power adapter of that size, but let's hope it works. And then here is the ISA expansion card. It's got 3 ISA slots in it, and it's got a little cable that I assume connects over here to the laptop somehow. And here is an 8-bit ISA sound card. So let's just see if this actually fits. I don't know why it wouldn't. That would be pretty silly if it didn't fit. Yeah, goes right in like that. No problem. Seems to fit pretty well. Standard ISA slots. So this will be interesting to see if these cards actually work. But first, let's take a closer look at the Book 8088 itself. So in terms of size, this is very much on par with a notebook, I guess you would say, back in the day. And the closest thing that I have in terms of size is this HP OmniBook. I believe it's an 800. And you can see let's see, this is just slightly smaller. From this angle, it's about a ½ inch smaller all the way around. In terms of markings on the computer itself, we've got the label Book 8088 there, and that's about it. Nothing else on the back. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but it is kind of smoked glass here. I can see a battery, lithium-ion battery tucked away here. So here are some of the legacy ICs that are in here, although some of them are still being made, so they're still new chips, but they're legacy in terms of their form factor and things like that. We've got a color graphics adapter here, which is kind of all in this little segment here with these 3 ICs. If all this talk of reproducing a vintage computer has you thinking that you might want to give it a try, look no further than today's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay offers inexpensive PCB manufacturing and a whole lot more. Need assembly services? No problem. They can do front side, back side, through-hole components, you name it. They also offer 3D printing, CNC milling, and more. So check out PCBWay for your next project, and I thank them for their support of the Retro Hack Shack. Let's go ahead and open it up and take a look at what's inside. Oh, very nice. So it's got the, first of all, it's got an MS-DOS sticker. I do like that. And then it's got an OPL3 Yamaha sticker because I opted for the version which has the OPL3 Yamaha chip in it. And that should be under one of these doors right here. Here we go. Here's the OPL3 board that this comes with. So this does have a real OPL3 chipset on it. Yeah, this is the 8080 chip here. This is the NEC new version of the 8080, and it's marked 1984 NEC. And then I believe this must be the ROM, EEPROM for this thing. And it even has a space in here for the 8087 math coprocessor. It doesn't come with one, but if you had one and you wanted to stick it in here, you certainly could stick it in right there. Okay, in terms of keyboards, you know, this isn't too bad. It has a mechanical feel to it, and, you know, it's not clicky, but it is very tactile. And I kind of like it, although, you know, it's hard for my big old man hands here. They're not even as big as some people's, but it would be kind of hard for me to type on this all day because my hands do feel a little bit cramped. It's okay. I could use this. I could use it in a pinch. Okay, so I've got this plugged in now, and I do have some battery lights on the side here. So it looks like it is charging, or one light anyway. It looks like it is charging the battery. I think that's what that indicator is. So let's go ahead and turn it on and see what we see. First boot. Will it work? Can't get the power to come on. The button is too shallow. This will probably turn on when I put this in and I want to get it on camera. Okay, yep, it did. Okay, first boot, here we go. I got some beeps. That's a good sign, I think. Oh, there we go. 8088, NEC 8088, okay. Oh, look at this. This is interesting. It's coming up with an XT to IDE universal BIOS. So this is running the same BIOS that would be on the XT to IDE chip. That's really interesting. I think we're in C here. It's awfully hard to see. No pun intended. But yeah, here's C. Command.com, config.old. I'm assuming there's a config.sys. Yeah, config.sys, autoexec.bat. So everything that you would expect to see on a traditional IBM type computer is here, except it's really weird to see it in a laptop form factor. And, oh, there it goes. It came back. It was still calculating the remaining free space because it was never meant to have a disk this large on it. And sure enough, pulling out the compact flash card that came with this, you can see it is a genuine compact flash card, and it states right on here it's 512 megabytes in size. And that's not the only way to get files on and off the system. You may have noticed that this machine has a USB port on the side. It's not a standard USB port to use for mice or other peripherals. It's actually a specialized port to use with USB storage drives, and there's a special USB controller built into this system that will mount that particular drive as a DOS drive in the system. That way you can easily transfer files on and off. Although I will say in my testing, the speed of that particular controller was pretty bad. So I think it's a lot easier to use the CF card if you can. Also, you may have noticed that the screen is slightly off center here. It's actually pushed off to the left a bit. And this was actually captured in the manual I found for this online, where it says that you need to type in mode 80 several times perhaps to get this thing to go back. It seems like randomly, and more often than not, in some cases, this will actually push that text off to the side like that. So that's kind of annoying, but it's easy to rectify. One other thing I found out from the documentation is that this thing does support enabling turbo mode, as the CPU does support that. So you can just hold down function and hit F6, and that will turn on turbo mode, and I'll be using that on and off throughout the rest of my testing with this device. Let's go into Windows and type Win. I think this comes with Windows 3.1. I don't think it'll run off the bat. Will it? Did it set the path? Oh, yeah, it did set the path. Okay, so here we go. Windows 3.0 from Microsoft. Doesn't look half bad. It's a little stretched. This does bother me a bit. I think this is throwing me off too. Never intended to have a 16:9 resolution monitor. In fact, this may be even wider than that. It might be 16:10 or something. Let's see if I do. Yeah. Traditional Windows. So because this is already running the XT to IDE BIOS, that means that I can take my XT to IDE card that I use all the time. It has a card in here that's running MS-DOS 5, and it's got a bunch of other stuff on it. It's actually a 2 gig card, but it's formatted to actually work on old DOS systems. This is what I run my 5150 on. Used it on the channel before, so I should be able to just plug in this card into this laptop, and everything should just work the way it would work in a standard 5150. So put that in, and let's see what happens when we turn it on. Here we go, checking memory. 640K of memory. Booting C, this is exactly what I would expect to see in my 5150. And yeah, it's running my config.sys now, or my autoexec.bat. And yeah, there we go. It's calculating the remaining free space on the drive, but no problem. Here we go, blue, so the color's working. I'm anxious to see what it reports for color compatibility here. Yep, so it comes back as a PCXT. It's got the little color and video test going on. Now it's going to test the math coprocessor, but there is no math coprocessor, so, that's going to be pretty standard. But so far, this is working just like a PC would work, a PC or a PCXT. Interesting. Red, green, and then watch what happens when I go to blue. It's almost like it's trying to get the right resolution and then going to this wide resolution. See, for a second, it comes up, the resolution starts out normal, and then it goes to this wide resolution for this wide screen. So there we go, the no color palette test. So the color looks pretty basic, very, very basic color right now. All right, so I'm zoomed in a bit so we can play some Alley Cat. We should see the classic CGA colors, those fuchsia and cyan colors. So let's go ahead and see if this works. Yep, looks like it's working. It does that weird refresh thing to get the resolution right. I kind of don't like that, but what do you expect for something like this? Yeah, seems like it's working just fine. Do you want to use a joystick? No. I'm going to be a kitten. Always hard to do this with just the keyboard. But the colors look really good. No problem with the colors. Oh, here I am over here. There we go. Now I can get... Oh, no! Okay, now I'm in the house. I don't think I've ever been on this screen before. Oh, no, 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 no. What am I supposed to do here? I'm supposed to get... Oh, I'm supposed to get the flowers? What? Anyway, yeah, this is... Oh, I'm back in another window. Okay, you guys don't want to see me playing Alley Cat. You want to see me testing out more of this laptop, so I'm just going to leave it there. The next thing I wanted to see is if I could get any other BIOSes running on this particular laptop. And when I searched online, I found that the BIOS that the developer of this product had used is actually a copy of another BIOS called the 8088 BIOS maintained by Sergey Kiselev. So apparently the developer just copied this BIOS and removed the attribution, essentially claiming the work as his own, although not overtly so. And that's a problem with open source projects. You need to provide attribution in accordance with the open source license that was used. And the developer decided not to do that. So luckily, Sergey has actually developed a version that will support the book 8088. So I burned that to an EEPROM and I want to get that installed in this laptop. And here I ran into problems again. It turns out that the door that you can open up to get access to these chips isn't quite big enough. So I can't pull out the processor and I can't pull out the EEPROM that the BIOS is loaded on. So now it's time to take this thing apart, which was easily done by removing 9 screws on the back of the laptop. And this gives us a good chance to look at the top side of the board here, which is very sparsely populated. But pulling out the EEPROM that was in here, we can see it's a standard 27C512 EEPROM. So I was able to quickly reprogram another one with Sergey's updated BIOS. And once I pop this in here, we can see if it works. You heard that right, this BIOS has been programmed to play the Intel Inside music when it boots up instead of the standard boring beeps like the old IBM PCs used to do. And it has a lot more information on the boot up screen than the old BIOS did. That'll really help with troubleshooting some of these ISA cards I want to try out later. Okay, now let's try Prince of Persia. This game does run on an 8088 in turbo mode. I think it'll even run without turbo mode, but it's going to be super slow. And it should auto-detect the Adlib card if it finds one. So let's go ahead and fire this up and see what it sounds like. Oh, and I better turn on turbo mode. Okay, turbo mode is on. Little glitch there when it first came on. This is definitely synthesized music over multiple speakers with synthesized sound. It's not the PC sound. So that sounds pretty good and looks pretty good. Let me give you a direct audio feed out. So here we go. Let's just see how this plays. I mean, this would be the, yeah, that's not bad. That's pretty typical, actually. I mean, you know, we're stuck with CGA colors for now, but yeah, that actually looks pretty good. And come on, get up there. There we go. Yeah, and it responds basically the way that you would imagine if you ever played this game as a kid. There's not a lot of lag. It looks great. A few little audio glitches as it was starting up, but yeah, you could actually play this on this little laptop. So not bad for a game that came out, I think, in 1990. And if we run this with the command prints space std.snd, there's a lot of options you can run here with the executable, then we should get an example of what the standard IBM PC speaker sound sounds like. Yeah, so dramatic difference there in terms of going from the Adlib sounds to the PC sounds, but they both work. And with this game, at least, Prince of Persia, they work automatically and things are automatically detected. So yeah, this seems to work fine. So as you can see, from the mess on my desk, I've been doing some testing and getting out some equipment and trying some things. So I wanted to test some of the cards that I got on the video I did on my second channel recently, where I actually found 57 ISA cards at eWaste and kind of went through them in real time with you and kind of discovered what they were. And some of them I didn't know. And you guys suggested lots of help and tips for identifying some of the ones that I couldn't identify off the top of my head. So thank you to everyone that commented. That was on my second channel. eWaste Wednesday videos and other videos will appear over there as well. So yeah, just make sure you go over and subscribe. And thanks to everybody that's subscribed already. I really appreciate it. But let's just talk for a minute about these cards and how they're going to connect to this laptop. So this will connect to the laptop, and it saves you from having a huge connector or some weird thing. It does save a lot of space. So that's how you connect this to the back of the laptop with a included cable. This board also has a barrel jack for 12 volt input here because the 12 volt bus is not passed through from the laptop to this board. Let's talk about some issues that may arise, and I've seen in just a little bit of testing I've done with this thing. Number one, out of those 57 cards that I found in that big box at eWaste, there's only a small amount that are actually 8-bit ISA cards instead of 16-bit ISA cards. And yes, some 16-bit ISA cards will work in an 8-bit slot, but I'm not going to go through and try to figure out which ones will and which ones won't. It just takes too much time. So I'm going to be concentrating on the 8-bit ISA cards only for obvious reasons here. Also, I haven't tested these. This isn't like I'm testing good known working cards. One of the things I wanted to do with this laptop, if it worked well enough, was to use it as a test bed instead of getting out my IBM 5150, which, weighs 20 pounds and you got to take the cover off and all that. If I could use this reliably to test cards that I find at eWaste or wherever, then that would actually save me a lot of time and effort. So, however, I haven't tested these cards, so they could all be bad. I just don't know. One last thing that's going to probably cause an issue is the original 5150, the PC and the PC XT, I believe, both had dip switches, and those dip switches would change memory settings and BIOS settings that would allow you to, for example, use an EGA card that has its own BIOS. And the problem with that is that I haven't found any dip switches on this thing that I can switch to test, for example, an EGA card. So I'm going to try it out, but I have very, very little hope. Unless I can find a way to do it in software, I have very little hope that a card like an EGA card, which relies on those dip switches being changed for it to work, are going to work on this machine. So that may cause us some problems as well. Now, this cable is pretty short, so I kind of am stuck attaching this in the back here. So I'm not going to be able to give you a nice visual there. And there's really nothing going on there anyway, except I'm plugging the card in. So not a big deal. But first, I thought I'd try to test this 8-bit ISA Sound Blaster card. This is a Sound Blaster CT1350B. Again, don't know if it works. Don't know what will happen with resource conflicts, etc. I have gone in here and changed some of the settings here, IRQ settings and so forth, so that they would hopefully not conflict. And also I'm hoping that the updated BIOS may show some information about conflicts or something like that when it boots up, kind of as the checks that it does as it boots. So let's go ahead and plug this in and see what happens. And I do have the Sound Blaster drivers loaded on the CF card, so if it does actually boot up and doesn't, conk out on me as it's booting, then I'll be able to load the drivers and actually see if I can detect it and play anything. So let's go ahead and start it up, see what happens. Ooh, that's not good. So I'm getting no signal, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off. Now, I did test these cards for shorts. I'm not detecting any hard shorts on them. But yeah, putting the Sound Blaster card in causes this thing to puke and not boot at all. So either the card is bad or there's some sort of conflict that is causing it not to boot. But yeah, Sound Blaster card so far, not working, at least not this one. Now let's just try, I don't know if I have drivers for this card, but let's just try this Reveal card. I think it's a Sound Blaster clone. And it is 8-bit. So let's just put this in and see if I get any better results from this one. Okay, so this card is at least not causing the system to crash. So let me see if I can install the drivers real quick and see if we get anything out of this sound card. Okay, well, that's 3 or 4 hours of my life that I'm not going to get back. I didn't go through all of that, obviously. This is not going to work, or at least I don't have the time to get it to work right now. I did finally find the drivers. They're almost impossible to find under the name Reveal, but I did find that this was a clone of a Sound Galaxy NX2 sound card, so I was able to get those drivers. Unfortunately, when you try to install them, it seems like the setup program is hard-coded to look for these disks on floppy. Because I don't have a floppy interface yet working for this, it's going to be impossible for me to get these drivers to load. Maybe I'll come back to it later, but yeah, I just wasted too much time on this. I fiddled around with DOSBox trying to get the driver files extracted from their proprietary files on the disk and the setup disks. And anyway, I spent a lot of time on it. I'm not going to go any further. I think this card would work, given it enough time to work out getting the drivers installed. But as it is right now, I'm not going to go any further. So, okay, I'm pretty not sure this is not going to work, but I'm just going to plug it in and try it anyway. This is a EGA card. This is a Vega Video 7 card. These are pretty good cards. I have another one of these that I use all the time, and it's got some cool emulation settings. You can change whether it does like CGA or MDA graphics in software if you want, or using the dip switches over here. So this is set up to work with EGA, so let's just go ahead and plug it in and see if we get lucky. Like I said, I don't think so, because I can't change the dip switches that would be on a normal 5150. So anyway, let's plug it in, just see what happens. Okay, I've got the card plugged in. I've got my RGB to HDMI device that I sell on my website connected, set up for EGA mode. So if anything does happen to come out of this card, or it does oddly work, should be able to pick that up. But let's go ahead and turn it on and just see what we get. Oh, that's not good. So it started to boot, but then it failed at some point. And I'm guessing it's because those settings, like I said, we can't change those in any way, so I can't get it to run the BIOS. There's probably some sort of like a BIOS conflict here. Unless there's a way to change that, like have it hard-coded in the BIOS, perhaps. Maybe I can work with the developer to get that done, but I don't even know why. It's only really because this one doesn't have those dip switch settings. So yeah, not working with this, but let's try a CGA card. All right, so here's one of the CGA cards I found in that big e-waste haul of ISA cards. Fairly bog standard, but it does say CGA right down here. Get that focused. And it says CGA on the back here too, so definitely a CGA card. So let's go ahead and plug this in. All right, here we go. Hey, this is working. Awesome. So yeah, for a CGA card, you don't have to change the dip switch settings. They're already set for CGA because that's what the laptop uses. So it's basically just mirroring the two displays, using the internal one and the external one. And even though I have this set for EGA mode, it's still good enough to display the CGA graphics that are coming out of this little card. So yay, win, card works. It's working on the laptop. Let's just pull up a game or something and just see what it looks like. I'm sure it'll look great, but let's just see. And there we go. Prince of Persia looking fantastic on my monitor because of the RGB to HDMI adapter. And yeah, that's great. So this would look good on a CRT, or like I said, you can use an adapter like this, whatever, but it's working really, really well. This looks really good. All right, well, I really also wanted to try some of these floppy adapter cards, but unfortunately, the laptop is hard-coded to emulate an A drive and a B drive internally somehow. So the problem with that is I can't add any external drives. So I can't use a card like this and add more drives because there'll be a resource conflict. There'll be a conflict in there. So unfortunately, testing out floppies is out. I did try to test one just to see if it would maybe override. Maybe there was some software in there that would override and say, hey, if you find an actual, controller card, then use that instead. That would be a nice addition here, but oh well, not working. Okay, let's test this IO card. I picked this one because it's clean. It's got all the chips, so it should have multiple ports if I want to test that. And it's configurable. It's got all these jumper connections, so I can change settings if I need to. And above all, this card is cool. See what I did there? All right, let's go ahead and test this card out. See, maybe I can get a mouse working. Okay, first I just want to check it's got no LPT ports and no COM ports. So hopefully this should not be a conflict. All right, I went ahead and plugged in a very old school Logitech mouse and plugged it in, cards in. Let's see if my readout changes now from the BIOS. It's very helpful to have that BIOS print out some of these specs. Yep, there we go. COM 1, it sees COM 2, and it sees LPT 1. So yeah, this is awesome. This is looking like it's totally working, but need to load a mouse driver and see if I can get this mouse to work. Okay, so I've tested this card now on this machine, and I've also, which it was not working, and I've also went ahead and took it and the mouse over to my 5170 that's sitting over there on the shelf, and it wasn't working over there either. But what I noticed is that this card, when I took it over there, was giving me different COM ports that were available than it did here on this machine. And so I did two things. Number one, I looked at all of the settings on this particular board, all the jumper settings. I looked them up. You can find the jumper settings online for this board. And I did some things like disabling the second COM port, for example. It was set for the LPT port as LPT2, and there was no LPT1, so I moved that over to LPT1. So just kind of simplified things and made it more standard. The other thing that I noticed was that the mouse wasn't working. So this 3-button Logitech mouse that I have is going to need some attention. So I'm going to have to mark this not working. And when your mouse isn't working, what are you supposed to do? Why, of course, you pull out your user manual, the Logitech mouse user manual, all 200 pages of it. Oh, here's the problem. I wasn't holding it correctly. I went ahead and went through my stuff and I found this Microsoft mouse. It is the absolute worst looking mouse that I own. It is just decrepit. The cord is all brown and gross, and the mouse itself is very yellowed. But I think this combination will work. So let's go ahead and fire this up and see what happens. So I can see that this is now reporting COM 1, and it gives me the address there. Now this is saying LPT2, but I looked this up in Checkit. Checkit is reporting this as LPT1. So a little bit of strangeness there. Not really sure what's going on, but let's just see if this works. I do have the Microsoft mouse drivers loaded, but instead of using that, I'm going to go ahead and use Qt Mouse to see if that will work, because that kind of works generically with just about everything I've found in all the testing that I've done. So I try to use Qt Mouse whenever I can, and you just run CT Mouse. Here we go. And yeah, installed on COM1. It tells me the address and the IRQ, and it says it's in Microsoft mode, which is good because it's a Microsoft mouse. So this is now working. We should be able to go in here and run edit. And there we go. Mouse is now working in DOS mode. Yay! Now let's see if we can get the mouse working in Windows. As this boots up, I will say that until now, I have been using the arrow cursors, the keyboard, to get around Windows and test some things out. And boy, is that a pain in the butt. Windows will come up, and I remember this from using it, a long time ago. It'll come up with a little mouse cursor. Even if you don't have a mouse, it'll at least come up with that little hourglass. And that can be a little bit confusing. When I first jumped into Windows, the mouse was not working at all. And I remembered, luckily from back in the day, that you actually have to configure Windows to tell it that you have a mouse. Otherwise, it won't do anything. So what I did for that is I just went ahead into the main window and went into Windows Setup. And right now this says mouse, Microsoft or IBM PS2. But when I first came into the setup program, it said no mouse configured. There was no mouse on that line. But you can go in here and change this. You just have to go into the options, change system settings, and you can tab down to the mouse line. And you can change it to, you can use up and down to change it to whatever you want. Now, when I first did this, what it was asking me for was the disk 2 from the Microsoft Windows 3.0 installation, which, of course, I did not have. It would not take a subdirectory on the C drive as an input for those files, even though they were there. So then what I did was I remembered that this thing will read or mount a USB drive as an external drive. So I went ahead and plugged that thing in. It mounted it up as an external drive. I put all of the files from that floppy, which I downloaded from WinWorld online. I put those in the root directory of the USB drive, and then I pointed it at this drive letter, which happened to be E in this case. Sometimes it's D, sometimes it's E. In this case, it was E. I just put in E://, hit enter, and then it loaded all the files just fine, and it asked me to reboot. And once it did that, ta-da! The mouse is 100% working in Windows. So I can go in here and close things out. It's working just fine. There's absolutely no problems. So now we can open up games and do a little solitaire, which I still play quite a bit on my phone. There we go. Now I can see the palm tree a bit better as this is in black and white. And there we go. We can go ahead. Oh, this is going to be a problem, isn't it? Because I don't have color. So I'm going to have to remember my colors. I think I can do that, right? Yep. So there we go. Now I can play a game of solitaire using my mouse, and it's going to be much easier than trying to do that with a keyboard. I don't even know if you can do that with a keyboard. So this is great. I validated that this I/O card works, and it's working fine with this machine. I could get a mouse running on it. Seems like if I wanted to add a printer, for example, I could do that now through that port. So I'm really happy to see that this card is working. All right, so time for some final thoughts on this book, 8088. Let's start with maybe some pros and cons. Pros would be that, look, it's light. I mean, you would never do that with an actual 5150 or 5160 from IBM, but you can do it with this. It also has a battery. So while I ran it on power most of the time, you could totally run it on battery instead and make this thing completely portable. So those two are definitely pros. I would also say that since it mostly has the real hardware in here, at least in terms of processor, a BIOS chip, the screen chips on the back, I mean, those are all maybe not of the same period, but at least accurate in terms of the dimensions of the chips and the fact that you can actually pull them out. They're all socketed. You could change them if you want to. I think that is a pro as well, because they certainly could, whoever made this thing or came up with this thing, certainly could have decided not to go with any of that and just used SMD components and soldered everything to the board so that it wouldn't be changeable, but that would really be going against the spirit of coming up with one of these devices. And the fact that it does include the sound card and the ISA expansion. Again, those are choices that could have gone a different direction. So kudos to whoever came up with this for actually including those as well. The biggest con for me was the fact that I couldn't test everything with this. It would have been nice if I had just a little bit more control over how this thing operated so that I could, for example, do what I wanted to do with it, which is test more of these ISA cards without having to unscrew my 5170 or my 5150 or lug that out with the monitor and everything and use that for testing. I'll be able to test some cards with this, it looks like, based on the results that I got, but not everything. So having a little bit more compatibility either in software or hardware to have some more control over emulated floppy drives or not, for example, or being able to test a EGA card on this thing would be really nice to have in a future product. To be honest, I wasn't expecting that much out of this product, but I was actually pleasantly surprised. It worked in terms of how you would expect a 5150 or 5160 to work. And I had a blast playing with this. Now, granted, there were some things that were really challenging to get working, but those are things that are challenging on a real 5150 or 5160 from back in the day. Things like finding the right drivers, resource conflicts. You're always going to have those on those machines. So a lot of my time was spent just troubleshooting and having a lot of fun seeing what I could get to working and what I couldn't. And, would I recommend this over a 5150? No. Is it a little bit expensive for what you get? I would say it's borderline. I'd say it's right in between that sweet spot of being too expensive or not. For me, if it's a fun little novelty, and I'm happy to pay the $200+ to get one of these with the ISA extension and the sound card in it. I mean, it's really not that much in comparison to everything. I think there's more possibilities maybe for the community to come alongside and make some special mods for this thing or change it in some way. If you have any ideas of how you might want to do that, or, perhaps, get involved on Vogons or one of the other forums where, we can see like what kind of changes can be made to this. And I will say that adding the BIOS that Sergey did to actually support this product really did help a lot, to have all those resources listed and things like that. I felt at least that way I was being true to the community and true to him and his work, as opposed to what the developer initially did with this product, which was to remove all those mentions from the BIOS, which goes against the license of that work. It goes against the GPL. You need to give credit for those things. And being able to chuck this into my bag and maybe take it to a vintage computer night and, I don't know, pull up a few programs on it, certainly, again, a lot easier than the 20 or 30 pounds of monitor plus big case that I would have to do if I was taking a real IBM PC or PCXT to that event. I do want to say a huge thank you to all my patrons. They make this channel possible. If you want to become a patron, the link is down on the bottom. And I have a whole playlist of other IBM videos that I'll put on the screen here. If you want to take a look at those, I go through the 5150 and all sorts of mods and interesting things to discover. So I highly recommend checking out that playlist, and I'll see you in the next video.
End of line.